Welcome to Roundtable Mindset, the podcast where we seek to understand and share different perspectives in order to grow and challenge our own. And we encourage you, our guest, to do the same.
Each week we will pick a topic to discuss, sharing our own unique thoughts and insights. There will be times when we won't agree, and let's be real, that's probably going to be most of the time, and that's okay. We feel it's important to understand that we can live in this polarized world and still respect one another and even be friends.
Well, hello, and welcome back to Roundtable Mindset. This is Jamie.
And I'm Malin.
And we're here for a heartfelt episode of Roundtable Mindset, with Valentine's yesterday and stuff. So we're going to talk about all things Valentine's.
Valentine's Day. Ugh, it's my least favorite holiday.
I was going to say, we're not going to talk all things Valentine's because I know how much you love Valentine's Day, but...
Well, and I think I shared this with you before. So for years now, and I'm talking since I was a little kid, I silently boycotted Valentine's Day I wear black that day. So I don't put on a lot of colors. So here's where it comes for me. I hate the fact that there's a dedicated day that most people think that they can use that to show their significant other how much they love them. And the rest of the year they can just be like, whatever, it doesn't matter. Working at retail also, being a former Walmart employee when I was a kid in college, you see the dark side of last minute gift buying for your significant other. Flowers and candy and all of this stuff that people are literally coming through my line at 3:00 p.m. on Valentine's Day to buy stuff. It just drives me absolutely nuts.
Well, and that's, for me, it's the commercialization of it that drives me crazy. But I don't have anything personally against Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day and I are buddies. It's fine. I wear purple.
My anniversary is a couple days after Valentine's Day, and I kind of don't hate that because I can do something small and light for my wife for Valentine's Day, but then our focus is our anniversary that's just a couple days later. So I kind of get out of having to celebrate Valentine's Day in a big way because our anniversary is right there. I always do something because I do want my wife to recognize how much I love and appreciate her, but at the same time, it gives me an out to say, but our big present and our big, we're going to really celebrate our anniversary. So we'll just go light on our Valentine's. So.
Well, and I have a hard time imagining that your wife does not know how you feel about Valentine's Day because I know how you feel about Valentine's Day. I'm pretty sure everyone around you probably knows how you feel about Valentine's Day.
Well, now everybody that listens to us knows, yes, she's quite aware about my aversion to Valentine's Day, but I try to make it special for her. Like I said, always get her something. And I tell her, I'm like, don't waste your time with mine. Just focus on our anniversary. Like, I don't need anything. So
your distaste for Valentine's Day is now internationally known. Way to go, my friend.
That's right. That's right. So yeah, today's episode, although I won't call it Valentine's Day. I'll say it's love inspired. And from our food for thought today all the way to our main topic, it's going to be what I want to say is kind of like an exploration of the complex emotion that is love. So we're going to be talking about some of the things that we don't normally associate or think about when we're talking about the love emotion or feeling. So I'm kind of excited for that take on that emotion, not so much the emotion itself. So hopefully it comes through in today's episode.
So you're excited for the heartfelt episode that we're about to record. I love it.
The twisted heartfelt. Yes, that's what I was saying.
Okay. Oh, goodness. Okay. Food for thought. What is your heartfelt food for thought question, my friend?
Okay, so this one is, again, looking at love relationships from a little bit skewed viewpoint here. But my question for you today is, does jealousy have a place in a healthy relationship?
So I love personally, for me, when I'm like listening to podcasts and stuff, I love like the little behind the scenes thing. So I'm gonna give everybody just a little behind the scenes. Malin sends me these questions by text message, typically in the middle of the week or on a random Tuesday. And this one, I read it and I was like, no. And then I stopped and I decided, Malin has something else for me, and this is like the guise that is to get me to say that so that he can say, but what about? So I'm just going to not say anything and let you give me the what about.
Well, that's fine if you want to suck all the fun out of it for me, Jamie. But no. So, a little bit of context to this, I think will be good. So yes, I think anytime you hear the word jealousy, it's a negative connotation. And, sometimes jealousy drives people to do some really horrific things. And sometimes it's a nice little kick in the pants to get motivated to maybe spend a little extra time focusing on somebody you should be focusing on. So you're right. There was a little bit of a hidden agenda when I asked that question, because I think the normal response from anybody, and I don't mind sharing, my wife and I had a conversation around this. And I think the natural reaction is, well, no, jealousy has no place in a nice, healthy relationship. And here's my point to counter that. What happens if you start looking at jealousy as a barometer for your love? What happens if jealousy is really the measurement in which we should be measuring how we are loving the person in our life? So to say it differently, because again, you're looking at me now, how my wife was looking at me like, what are you talking about?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So here's an example. You're in a relationship with someone and things are going okay. What happens if they start talking to a person I'll make it really easy. So I'm in a relationship with a woman and everything's going fine, but then they start talking to another man. What if jealousy is not something I feel when I see that? Couldn't that be a nice barometer to make me understand, am I in a relationship I want to be in? Shouldn't I be jealous? Why am I not so worked up that there's this conversation happening? And I'm not saying like some guy started asking my wife where directions are. Like there's a little bit of flirtation. There's a little bit of chemistry there. It's not just a mundane conversation. So to my argument would be, I think there is a place for jealousy in healthy relationships. I
guess I can't argue that. Like I can't argue that might be an indicator of where your relationship is. And I don't know why the word jealousy kind of sticks out to me as like the word jealousy might be what it is. Like what it is that's keeping me from going there. Cause there are times where I'm like, oh gosh, I just, I'm jealous for work taking all your time, or, those kind of things where it's just like, I just want to spend more time with you. And those things that keep you away from being able to spend time with me might, I suppose you could call it jealousy, but jealousy to me has a much more sinister meaning to it. Like, to me, if there's jealousy present, that's typically the sign of an unhealthy match. You know what I mean? So, I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I feel like jealousy has a whole different level in it that makes it not okay.
Well, and I agree with that. And this is my take. If jealousy is the main feeling, or is jealousy is the main, I guess, your go-to. Also, what's the motivation behind the jealousy, right? So I think jealousy can get very ugly. I don't want to, twist those wires. Jealousy can get really ugly, and there's a lot of horrific things that are done in the name of jealousy. But all I'm saying is, if you have a nice, healthy relationship and things are going fine, I think jealousy could be a nice barometer for that, because what happens if things are fine and you don't really notice it, but then you're also not really getting jealous if somebody's like, and I'm not saying jealous to the point where you get into a physical fist fight with anybody, but there should be something, I guess, inside you that says, this little green-eyed monster is kind of peeking up. I don't like it. That is a good indication that maybe this is a relationship you want to maintain, or you want to grow or take to the next level. I can't imagine being in a relationship with someone that if they did start talking to the opposite sex, I wouldn't have some sort of form of jealousy, because if there wasn't any, I think you really have to call in question, are you in the right relationship? And maybe that's what you're saying about a healthy relationship. I'm thinking healthy versus toxic, not healthy as in, is this a relationship that's going to continue to grow? But all in all, I think jealousy does get a bad rap for everything that we talked about, but I do think it could be used, like I said earlier, as a barometer into your current relationship.
Yeah, well, and I don't know. I look up jealousy, and it gives you the word jealous in the definition. So there's not much help there. So I love it, love it, love it. Go back to the root word, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think if, oh, well, it could also, I don't know. See, as I'm thinking through this, I think there might be, maybe there's just a level of trust. Like if I don't get jealous, does that necessarily mean that the relationship isn't, that there's something not quite right? Or is there just a level of trust that I don't worry about? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And I'm kind of, I know, I get where you're going to, because there should be a level of trust that you have with a partner, right? So if somebody starts flirting with them, you're still secure enough knowing, okay, they're not going to do anything with it. Yeah, I just want to go rip that person's face off. But again, I get it. To me, I'm kind of equating this to, to me, jealousy is, and I'm trying to go back in my own experience. To me, jealousy is one of those knee-jerk reactions that happen. It's an emotion that it is almost synonymous with I'm experiencing something that I need to have stop because it's really charging my other emotions. And to me, even if you don't act on it, and even if you have trust in a relationship, there's still that flicker, I'll say, that momentary, like, oh, that's happening. Okay, but I trust the person, so I'm stepping down, I'm backing away, everything's gonna be fine. But you still are like, that person's irritating me because they shouldn't be doing that. I'm talking the absence of any form of jealousy. Like there's just nothing there. It's not bothering you. So it's not really even do you trust the person or not? Because even in a relationship where you trust someone, I still think there's that feeling of, I don't like that needs to stop, even if it's just talking with your partner after the incident's over, because again, you trust them. That's kind of what I'm talking about when I say there's jealousy in that regard. To me, I think could be used as a good tool in a healthy relationship just to make sure everything's still on track.
I'm not going to lie. I feel a little bit like you were stalking me this weekend or something. Because, well, the Doyle and I were out shopping this weekend where he works. And I can't tell you, like, I don't know if he's like, people just love him, and he's just so fun and friendly and easy to talk to. I think that like everybody is stopping him, and it's all the girls. It's all the ladies in his workplace. And I'm just like, I had this little moment where I'm just like, oh my God, can you guys just back off? Okay. He's mine.
Jamie was jealous.
And the irony is that I trust him completely. I have no question about his integrity or, any of that. But there was that little moment of, look, another one,
Jamie's going to give him a bottle of perfume that says ode to Jamie. What are you wearing, Jamie? That's right. Back off, people.
It just cracks me up that you bring this question right after all of that happened just yesterday. So thank you for that.
and thank you for bringing a real life example of exactly what I was talking about and validating everything I was saying. I appreciate that, Jamie. Thank you.
Well, what's interesting to me is that I think those two things can live together in that, I think you're dead on that jealousy can sometimes be a reaction. I do think that there are unhealthy situations where the jealousy becomes controlling and it becomes fearful, and it becomes something much deeper that does indicate a really unhealthy relationship. But I really love my guy, so I got a little jealous, and then my cognition kicked in and said, what do you have to worry about? And then I realized it was fine. They just all love him like I do because he's a good guy. So
yeah, no. And again, the people that use jealousy as the driving force, I think that's where we start getting into trouble, right? When jealousy is driving your reaction or your actions to that, that's where problems, I think, lie. So just don't let it do that to you, Jamie.
Fun question on this loving holiday, Malin. Thank you for bringing that.
Yeah, and as we continue to kind of twist around the whole emotional spectrum, I'm going to try my best to kind of kick off this next. So our main topic here, if you can't guess, and I think I stated it in our intro even, which was we were talking around the emotions of love today. And there's a lot to unpack. I'm not going to lie. So, when I first started researching, I was thinking, oh, okay, it's the emotion, the emotion that we all know and of as love. Not going to be a lot, right? Like, I think there's going to be a couple things about feelings and a couple things about maybe some actions that you do when you are in love. And that's going to call it a day. I got to tell you, I have pages of notes. I probably have 20 different topics, Jamie, that we don't have time in this hour to really get into and digest and unpack and dissect, that we're just going to have to gloss over. And it was more than surprising to me, because the more I picked at this, the more complex and the more it just kind of spidered out. And I came to my final conclusion, and we'll get through some of this research that I did, is love is a very complex emotion. And I think it's one of the suckiest emotions because of it. Because if those of you that are following along, last couple episodes ago, I did the emotional EQ, emotional intelligence test. And I scored very high in controlling my emotions. And one of the things that I've learned through experience and this research is the emotion, love does not play fair. It doesn't play by the same rules. It doesn't, as I look at other emotions, there are things that trigger them, or they respond in certain situations, and they make sense. Love doesn't make sense. Love is something that can hit you without warning. Love is something that it can be painful. Love is something that can, take your breath away, can make you cry. It can control your actions, make you do things you never thought you would. And it can also make you dumb. The old adage of love is blind, I think love is deaf and dumb too, because there are some people that do things in the name of love that any rational human being would never do. And that's the last thing I'm going to touch on, so I can take a breath and you can jump in here, is love isn't rational sometimes. And because of all of that, it is so interesting. It is so complex, and it is so aggravating.
Well, and it's funny because when you told me, like, Jamie, I have more research than I know what to do with, I just kind of giggled, because I'm like, I don't know. I guess I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting, I did a little Google searching myself. And I think we all get to a space in life where we think we understand it, and we understand ourselves in it. And so my questions weren't very creative. And the way that I was researching was like, I found stuff that I already knew because I was asking questions that I already knew. But I guess there's a reason that it's the number one written about subject. It's the number one recorded subject in music and movies. And, there's a lot of pieces to it. And I guess it makes sense that you found that much research. So where would you like to start with all of your research? I'm kind of excited because I'm my nerdy brain, my nerdy self is excited to hear research around love. So where shall we start, my friend?
So we're going to start in a place that you and I will probably not see eye to eye in. And again, I'm not trying to just say this is how you're going to respond, but typically we don't usually start our conversations rooted in the Bible. And so my research started me. I was like, okay, what do I know, right? What do I know about love? Well, I went to the Bible and I'm like, okay, tell me everything you can about love. And so I think this is a conversation that we can start from there, because these were the building blocks that I went after, because I wanted to say, from my point of view, what does even my faith have to say about love? And so here's what it is. In 1 Corinthians 13, 4-8, I think we've all heard this version. It's very popular. It's probably on home decor stuff across the globe. Plus, this is a very important Christian verse as well. And so it is, love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things. Love believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never ends. And that is where my research started, because I dissected each one of those.
It's a fair space to start. Fair space to start. I think that's part of like almost every wedding ceremony I've ever been to. So
yeah, it's very common. So I started looking at it and I'm like, okay, let's start breaking this apart. What is love? Love is patient. Love is kind. Doesn't do envy. So then I moved on from that and I started saying, okay, now I'm going to go to the rational side of my education, which when I was going to school, even in computers, there was a class I took that had to have, it was rooted in psychology. And it wasn't required for my major, but I took it because I was interested in it. So I don't want to say this is a psychology class was required to do an IT, because that doesn't make sense, but it was an elective and I took it. And in that class, you know what they talked about, Jamie? Something that we've talked about before.
Jealousy?
No. Love languages.
Okay.
So as I started to define what is love, because that's where I was trying to start from, is what is love? Let me put a definition to the word love. Started off with my research from the Bible, then went over to my education from my university days. And I was like, okay, there are actions that you can do with love. I'm just going to touch on what they are. We can't unpack them in this conversation, but just so everybody's on the same page with us. So there are 5 love languages. And these love languages show people, or how majority of the people see love or like to give love. And those are the acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, or physical touch. So then when I started applying that scope to it, you got a whole new sense of what love is, right? Love now becomes an action that you can do to others and that others can do to you. You have tangible and untangible. So then my definition of love starts to grow even more, right? Because now I never would have thought when I first started, love is more than just an emotion. Well, love is an act. So then I started going down the whole dictionary. What is love? Well, love's a noun. Love's a verb. Love's an adjective. Love is, it could be a tool. It can be a weapon. It can be a bridge. It can be a place where somebody hides. Love is very complex, to say the least. And so that's kind of where that beginning part of that research, as I clamped all of those pieces together to define what love is. I have my definition, but I'm just curious, Jamie, how would you define love?
Oh, goodness. That's a really big question for a 1-hour podcast when I need a minute to think about it. But I think, I don't know. I think what I love is that it's like you dug in and you found these things that you're able to put words to things that I've always known, or that I've learned, I guess. Maybe not always known, like I've been some oracle since I was an infant or something. But, like I know that love is a feeling. I know that sometimes my heart beats a little faster and my palms get sweaty. And that is love. I also know that my chest swells with pride and I can't imagine my life without my kids, and that is love. And I also know that, loading the dishwasher and running it before I go to bed because Doyle uses the sink in the morning is also love. And I also know that calling a friend and encouraging them during difficult times is love. You know what I mean? So it's hard to define, but I also think sometimes love is a choice. Sometimes you're not feeling it and you're not doing it and you still choose to stay in it because you know that those things will come back. It's secular, it's circular, it's, how do you put love into 5 words, right?
Well, and you can't. And my definition would be like 3 sentences. But you kind of already jumped ahead a little bit to what I was trying to get to. So I think I might just kind of follow along to you, which is love isn't just an emotion. And that took me a second. So when I bottled up all of my definitions, all of my research, love is more than just an emotion. And that to me, it was surprising. When I think about it, and we'll unpack it here and we'll dissect it, it makes perfect sense. But at least for me, anytime we start talking about the word love, I start in the emotional spectrum, right? That's where love begins when I talk about it. And I think after doing my research, and you kind of just alluded to it for our conversation, I think love as an emotion, purely as an emotion, I think lives in that space probably the shortest amount of time. The rest of the time, love is action. Love is choices. Love is hard. And there are some things that we're going to touch on where love can make you feel warm and fuzzy. Love can make you feel like your whole skin is on fire. Love can make you feel sad, anxious. It can also make you feel pain. And that's kind of where, to give the listeners and everybody else a little peek behind the curtain, that's really where I wanted to connect the emotion of love. I wanted to understand, because I've had experiences where pain and heartache and sorrow all come from the emotion, or what I thought was just the emotion of love. And I wanted to understand how those two can connect. How can you feel so much one way for somebody, but then those same actions can cause you so much pain on the other side? And I think I do understand a little bit better. And I think it's kind of fascinating to see how this all kind of intertwines. But yeah, you kind of took the punchline out a little bit, but the bottom line is love isn't just an emotion.
I think what's interesting is watching, and maybe you've seen this too with your teenagers. I think it's been interesting watching my kids learn about love as they've grown up. Watching them fall in love and all of the twitterpation and all of the feelings, and then helping them sort it out when that's gone. And it is just, it's more duty bound, and watching them go through that and try and figure that out and navigate that has kind of put an exclamation point on that for me too. Remembering what that's like and putting myself back in that space. So, I apologize for stealing the thunder a bit, but that's, it's hard to define in 3 sentences or less. So
yeah, no, it absolutely is. So then I started going down. I wanted to understand, where does love reside in the body? So if love is not just an emotion and love is some sort of physical attribute, where does it, what part of your body is responsible for love? And I found 3 areas. And this kind of starts touching on when we talk, I've traced this all the way back to ancient Greeks. So that's how far we're talking here. And I'm going to give you some examples here in just a second. But I wanted to know, okay, what part of the body is responsible for love then? If love is more than an emotion, where does it come from? And I found 3 explanations. And I think the answer is all 3 of them. But originally I found, obviously, your heart. So there's been a lot of research that's been, around love comes from the center of your chest, which I think that's why modern day we associate love with the symbol of a heart, is because that's where a lot of people associated with it. It comes from the fact, and I think you've talked about that for just a second ago, when you fall in love or you see someone, you get excited, your heart starts racing. So I think people just associate that feeling with, oh my goodness, that's, comes from the heart. The other part of the body that I kind of saw a mix was your stomach. So butterflies in the stomach kind of makes sense, right? If something's not going right and you love someone, and sometimes that jealousy can make you kind of like hit you right in the stomach too, and you're just like, oh, I don't feel so good. So that makes sense. The one thing that didn't make sense for me, and this is something that I'm learning, and again, it makes sense once you stop and think about it, but I never would have put this in the same place, is it comes from your mind too. And when you're researching, or at least when I was researching, love is a choice. And sometimes love is its absence of feeling. It's saying it's a commitment that you gave to someone, and it's fulfilling that commitment day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And so sometimes there's not those warm, fuzzy feelings that makes love, I'm going to say, using air quotes, easier, but your brain is tied into love. And so really, I was looking at this and I found there's not just one part of your body that's responsible for love. So it's more of a combination of the three areas that I just mentioned. So it's mind, it's heart, and I'm going to call it your stomach, but I don't know what there'd be a better way to say your nervous system, because that's kind of where it kind of all comes together. But I thought that was fascinating too, because when I found in the Greeks, you know, they always tried to find the reason or the source for these feelings. They were really big into, how do I explain what's happening to me emotionally through something that I can touch? And I came across what I just talked about, the places in the body where they thought love originated from. But I also found another piece that I thought was kind of funny. And did you know that they had 8 different types of love?
Hit what?
Yeah, the Greeks had 8 different types of love.
Okay, so my brain is trying to go through 8 different types of love. Like, are we talking like friends?
Yes.
The person you like, your lover, your children.
Yep.
Probably love for activity, like for something that you do, like a hobby.
Yes.
How many is that? 5?
Do you want me just to go through them?
Yeah. It would probably take less time in our podcast if we did that.
So I'm going to try to pronounce the Greek names with them too. Again, the reason I bring this up is, again, I was thinking love as an emotion, right? Like love to me was one dimensional, and it makes me sound really shallow to say that out loud. But again, that's what I just kind of lumped love and all these other things up into just one category. And I wasn't giving it the due respect that it deserved. And when I came across these 8 different types, I was like, come on, 8 different types. I can't argue with them, and they make sense. And what the Greeks did that I failed to do was understand the different levels of love, right? And they wanted to understand each one as its own persona, basically, versus just saying, oh, it's all love. It's just different degrees of it. Because we talk about those in terms of, you know, we don't state those out loud usually, but we all understand that a love for a family member or a child is different than a love you have for your spouse. They called it out. So here they are. So we have, and I'm going to do my best. So eros, that's your sexual passion. So that's the physical love. That's the, you know, I won't go into it too much, but that's what that is. Okay. You have philia, which is deep friendship. So there's a type of love. So I can kind of associate that with best friends, right? Or a friendship that you've had for a very long time. Or you became really close with somebody really quick. That is a different type of love than just someone you just met or an acquaintance. Right. Ludus, playful love. I don't quite know what that one was equating to, but there it is. I've heard this type of love before, agape. So this is love for everyone. So again, it's that general, you just have goodwill towards everybody. You kind of love everybody. That's agape love. There's pragma, which is long-lasting love, which I kind of associated that with. That's where from your mind, that kind of love is going to come from. So that's the choices you make for that long-standing love. Once the emotions have kind of died down, or once you don't have those butterflies in your stomach, this is the type of love, in my opinion, that keeps going because you choose it to keep going. This next one is going to be really hard for me. I'm going to try my best. Philatia, the love of the self. So you love yourself. Storage, and I'm sure it's probably pronounced storage, but it's spelled like storage. That's the love of family. And then there's mania, which is obsessive love. So they've broken the love down into 8 different types. And I think you can track each one of those to a physical part of the body within your mind, heart, and stomach, that these would all be somewhat associated with at some point in time.
Huh. I've written these all down because this is fascinating to me. I bet that playful love is like activity, or, you know what I mean? Like hobby. I could fit in that category. This is really fascinating, Malin.
Well, and now this gets into, now that I kind of walk through how, and again, this was all high level. So I just want everyone to know, like, I hope everyone else is finding it fascinating and kind of connecting the dots, because now to me, this is where the real heart of the questions that I wanted to go over, and this is really where I want us to kind of have more of that conversation, is looking at, I don't want to call it the dark side of love, but I wanted to look at it the harder side of love. Like, to me, some of these things, because now that I had a good base, as I continue explaining how I researched this, now that I had a good base on what I thought love was and kind of where it came from and the attributes, which are way more than just a feeling, I wanted to understand what kind of love, like going back to my original question, what kind of love is there that can cause pain? And parenting came right to mind. And so here's really kind of my first grouping that I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things that I found out with love is that love can grow people apart, and it's not that the love itself does, but the type of love that we have is meant to have a relationship start growing apart from one another. And the best example I have of that is that of a parent. So my mom told me years ago that a parent-child relationship is one that's meant to grow apart, not grow together. And as a young kid, that was something that I was like, that's kind of weird to say, Mom. Like, I didn't quite understand it. And then they let me go when I was 18. And I say they let me go like I was locked up, but they were like, you're an adult now. We're done. And we've talked about this. And so then I started understanding what that meant. And when I was doing my research and I was coming down to what kind of love causes pain, this was the first one I came to. And I'm sure this is going to strike a chord with you, Jamie, with all of your, transitioning that you've done and that I'm about to transition with my daughter. But I thought that was really kind of interesting to say, this is the first one I wanted to go down and kind of explore, to say, this type of love is meant for the relationship to start spreading apart and changing. Doesn't mean it ends, but it means that it's not meant to be as close per se as that once was because of the type of relationship. So I'm going to pause there to give myself a little break. But what do you think about that?
I think you suck. Just because it hits home so much. Just thinking about, at the same time though, maybe that's the most interesting dynamic of the whole thing, is that, yeah, it's painful. It has been painful, but I also see so much potential and possibility, and the growth in that. Maybe not together, as far as like that dependency piece of it, that sometimes we have with a partner. But at the same time, the change in that relationship has almost made it feel like I'm closer to them now than I was when they were younger. So yeah, you could probably do a whole study on that relationship alone and what that love looks like, because, it really is. What's that Facebook? There's a Facebook meme that I see circulating all the time. Like, having kids is like having a piece of your heart running around outside your body all the time, right? Like, it's just, they're out there and they're doing these things and you can't control everything that happens to them. And so that love never changes on some level, but at the same time, it really is different because a relationship gets to be so much different. So as painful as it has been, I'm also super, super grateful for it because it's been, because it's forced us into a different space in that relationship. So I do think that's probably a prime example of that. Although I think you could probably take that too, like even, when you've been with your spouse or your partner for a long, long time and one of them passes away, I suppose that's probably the same kind of, that loss of that relationship. It doesn't change what it is, but it does change what it looks like now. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. This is a deep episode today, and I was not expecting this at all. I'm going to be real honest.
I'm telling you, like I was doing this and I'm like, well, we just went into like 80-foot deep waters here, like real quick. And while we're on this subject of pain, is there any other kind of examples you can think of where love could cause pain instead of all the warm fuzzies that somebody feels? Because I have 2 or 3 other examples for you. I'm just curious if you have anything.
Love causing pain. I mean, I think of that phrase, I love you so much it hurts. Like, you've heard of that, right?
Yep.
And I think, I think of different examples of that where like, when it's not reciprocated or reciprocated in the same way, that might be that way. Or when it's not recognizable. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to like verbalize the idea that, that person can love you, but it doesn't look the way you need it to, or it doesn't fulfill the need that you have in that relationship or in that partner. And that might be a space where that is.
Well, and to help you out there, because you kind of touch on one that I'm going to give you credit on, which is disciplining our kids, right? How much have I heard this when I was a kid? My dad's like, this is going to hurt you worse than it's going to hurt me. And you're like, whatever, you're not the one getting the spanking or the discipline, whatever it is. How much you love this person so much that you're trying to correct the behavior that needs to be corrected, not because you're trying to control them, but because you're trying to keep them safe. You're trying to keep them going down the right path. You are showing them a form of love, and it's almost unrecognizable from that person because of the pain that it's causing. But it's not just causing pain to the person who's receiving it, it's causing pain to the person who has to give it. That was something I did not understand until I became a parent and I had to discipline my child. That suddenly all those years of my dad saying that, all of it just went right together. And I finally understood what he meant. And so I'm kind of giving you credit for that one too, because you had mentioned something about, what I thought I heard you say, but that was another example, which is you're causing pain to someone. You're doing something the pain is there, but you're doing it because you love them. And I'll say that's a healthy way, right? Like there's also times when people are going to manipulate, and we'll get to that in a second, or they're going to use love to manipulate you, or they're going to hurt you and say it's out of love that I do this to you, so you just need to accept it. That's not what I'm talking about here. That's a whole other side of ugliness. But when it's from a healthy point of view, it's still very painful for both people. That was another example of pain coming from an act of love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a truth. One of the hardest things I ever had to do was take something that one of my kids was really excited about away. And it was shocking how much that hurt my heart too, to not be able to allow them to experience that thing that they had worked so hard for, because of a mistake. But that is a hard lesson.
Yeah, and kind of on the backside of that, letting your kids, we're experiencing this now, and my daughter's making some pretty good choices, but it made me think about this. There are going to be times now where I'm going to have to let my child make choices that I know are not going to probably give the outcome that they want, but because I'm having to let them experience that, because that's what's naturally supposed to happen. And so it's almost the opposite, where you don't really intervene, or you don't come in and make sure that it doesn't hit your child with full force, because that's what you did as a parent. And it's almost standing by and letting this happen to him when you know things that can be done to either prevent it or soften it. But at the same time, your now adult child has to go through it. That's another form of pain that I've experienced, or I can see coming on the horizon from the act of love.
Also sucks. Yes. I maybe love does suck. Love sucks. Let's just.
Yeah. One more thing before we'll move on. Again, going back to some of our other conversations, I can only imagine, I've never had to experience this firsthand, but I can only imagine when you're trying to help a family member through addiction. I know in our other episode, we kind of touched on that a little bit. I can't imagine the pain and the angst and the arguments and confrontation that must go on to when you get to a point where you have to let somebody hit rock bottom. And again, it kind of touches on what I just said. You kind of have to sit back and let that happen. But this to me is a different form of that. And I've never experienced it, and I hope I never do. But for those of you that have experienced it, a tremendous amount of pain. And again, it comes from a place of love, and you're trying to care for someone. But that was my last example that I had around pain that comes from love.
Yeah. Yeah, that is also tough. Even if it's not a kiddo, if it's if it's a friend, even that hurts too. So.
All right. So we're going to move off of that, and I'm going to touch on manipulation. Again, there's a tremendous amount of stuff out there on manipulation through love. It's ugly. It's horrible. We could spend hours talking about it. So I am going to just gloss it up into this one point. And this was something that I heard even in a TV show when we were just watching it. And I'm kind of experiencing it. I don't know if you've seen the movie or the show Fargo, a series on, I think it's on Hulu. Have you watched
a series?
Yeah, it's every season it's like a new story. So it's not the same actors or even the same storyline, but every season they focus on one thing. Well, this season on Fargo, if you have not seen it, I would suggest buckle up though, because it's intense and it's about domestic violence. And I'm not going to spoil anything for you because the story is unbelievable. But it's the typical story that we usually see on television. There was domestic violence happening. The woman gets away. The man finds her, and the cycle resumes. And it's that struggle between those two characters and this horrible, life and event that they're going through. And what caught my eye or my ear one time is, in one of the episodes, they said something like, well, if you loved me, you would do this for me. And that's kind of the one thing I want to touch on with manipulation. Again, I'm not going to do it service. I just wanted to call out the fact that through even the act of, or in the name of love, there is manipulation that takes place. But the one thing that jumps out of my mind is that one sentence is, well, if you loved me, you would do ... Do you have any reaction to that, Jamie, or anything that you want to add? Again, we could go real deep on that. I'm not planning on it. The research was just about touching on the fact that it was there.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's a slippery slope, because I do think that there are times that, for instance, I go to sleep every night with a fan on, and I would not do that myself. I do something for the person that I love because that's what they are most comfortable with. But when it gets to a space where it starts compromising my own morals and values and ethics, that's when that's when it's not okay. But it's hard sometimes to determine that, because it doesn't usually start that way, right? I mean, it usually starts with tiny little things to test. And, it's a yucky space.
Well, and just to give a little bit of the stuff that I was going through. So to me, manipulation is one-sided, right? Manipulation, even if it's small and little bit, it starts off with, how can you change for me? Where I think people need to focus is compromise is healthy, right? Compromise is something different. I give up something for you, you can give up something for me, or I can start doing something for you, then you can start doing something for me. When it's always one-sided and it's always one person who has to do all of the changing, that screams manipulation to me. So that was another thing that I'll gloss over because there's so much we could get into. But that was a real big distinction for me. Compromise versus manipulation. Compromise, I would say, is healthy. Manipulation, obviously, for the most part, is not healthy. So then, as I look across, Jamie's like, how much more can there be? There's still quite a bit, but I'm trying to summarize. I really am. So then I started asking myself, okay, then, if love can be all of this horrible stuff too, just as long as it, and again, I say love itself, but how people use it can be painful. You could be manipulated by it. Well, how do people start understanding if they're in love? So I did go down a little rabbit hole, which I thought was kind of fun, which was how do people, and again, these are all like typical average, like this isn't saying this is exactly how everybody does it, but if I had to have some sort of research and I wanted some sort of metrics to say, how do people know they fall in love? I have a list if you're interested.
Oh, like criteria for diagnosis. I love it. What are the signs and symptoms of love?
Right. So, just so we know, there's 7 signs that I found. And again, I'm sure this is not all exhaustive, but I thought it was kind of fun. Number one, and I don't think this is in any particular order. They were just numbered that way. So I do want to say that. But number one on the list, you can't stop thinking about the person. And it says, seriously, during the day, they're always on your mind. So that's one sign. Another sign is you know them better than anyone else. So building that relationship with them is fun to do. It's not a chore. And suddenly you know more about them than anybody else in your life.
Okay.
3, you often think about a future with the person. So now it's not just I'm in a relationship. You start thinking about, 6 months from now, when I go on this trip, it'd be really great to have so-and-so with me. Suddenly you're planning, out a ways, and you picture your life with them rather than just picturing your life, with anybody.
Yep.
You prioritize spending time with them. So now you're finding yourself saying other things don't stack up against, or it doesn't have the same weight around to compare to spending time with this individual. So suddenly, as we all have been in a relationship, you can start telling your time starts getting more and more with this person because, again, you're prioritizing them. You're finding them more valuable, and so you want to have them in your life. Number 5, and with anything that has to do with feelings, I'm going to be sitting here going, now, wait a minute. But it's true. I just never really stopped and thought about it, but it's absolutely true, is you feel safe. And so I am going to read this one just because this one seemed to be kind of a big deal. So what it says for you feel safe, it's tough to put into words that feeling safe feels like, but it will manifest in a few different ways. You feel completely comfortable talking to them about anything. You show your true self without any hesitation, and they don't push you into uncomfortable situations or positions. I think that is very important, as if you're falling in love with someone, that has to be there or should be there.
Probably a really big red flag if it's not there. I mean, if we're being honest, that's a big piece of it, especially in the long term.
Exactly. And if you're kind of anything like me, which, you might not want to be, but if you're thinking about, well, where does the physical, because again, love is more than, it's an act, right? It's a verb. Where does the physical love come from? That's number 6 for everybody. So you're more affectionate. And so that goes down into the holding hands, the kissing, public forms of, what did they used to call that when we were kids? Public displays of affection, PDA. Yeah. And then also other things, as you can imagine. And then the last thing on the list is you feel actually on top of the world. This is what I was expecting out of all of my research. I would have said number 7 was how you felt like you were in love. So I'm glad that I went down these rabbit holes. I'm glad I kind of dug in, because I would have lumped all of what we've been talking to it would have been only one thing on my list, which would have been you feel like you're on top of the world. You have this lightness about you. You feel the warm fuzzies. That's all I would have associated with love. And that is just one aspect of what I'm finding.
Not to reference my all-time favorite television show, Grey's Anatomy. I'm available if they need me. But one of the years ago, there was an episode where a couple of them were getting married, and one of the things that they said during their vows was that I am responsible to someone who's something that's bigger than myself, right? Like this idea that there's this responsibility as part of love, that there is this idea that it is bigger than everything else. And that's kind of what I hear in that when you get to that space and you are submitting to something, you're contributing to your something, and you're adding yourself to something that's bigger than yourself. And that is, I think that's a really great way to wrap up all of those things. That, yeah, it does all kinds of great things for us. Love is great for us, and it's also a responsibility, and it's also work, and all of those things. And I think that's I think that has kind of shown through in your research. So I'm positive there is more that you did not bring today. And I'm positive that it took you hours to do that. So I appreciate that and just want to say thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome. And I have a couple more tidbits that I'll try to get through really quick as I look at the time.
Ooh.
So,
okay.
Fun facts. Statistically speaking, men fall in love faster than women.
Seriously?
Exactly. That's where I was at. I was like, what are you talking about? And again, I can't say that it's 100% everywhere in every situation, but statistically speaking, when I was doing my research, there was an article that talked about, and they had data to back it up, that men are the ones that are typically the ones who fall in love first in almost every relationship.
So hormonal and emotional women aren't the ones that do that. That's fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Which then led me to my next two questions. So I'm going to ask you this next question, Jamie, and then I'm going to go into my rant on the last one. So in your mind, how do the different genders, so if we're talking male, female, how do the two different genders love or give love? Do you know?
Oh, I think that in my own life, I have seen the men in my life. A lot of times it's like those acts of service, right? They love by providing, they love by protecting, they love by, those acts of service. I see that a lot. I feel like us women are all over the board. I know people, I know women who are totally like spend time with me. That's how I know you love me. But I'm an active service kind of person. So I don't know. I guess I can't say that I feel like there's a way to classify that gender specifically. Is there?
Well, and again, I don't think this is an absolute. I don't think this is always how it is, but I did want to know. I'm like, is men and women, do they see love differently, and do they show love differently, and I recognize love differently? And the answer is yes. And you were doing a really good job kind of touching on that. What this answer does tell me though is women are seems to be a lot deeper than men, which I can understand that. So the answer to the question that I have, which is how do the different genders love or give love? Men typically fall in love through physical attraction. So it's all about the physical, the touch, the look.
Oh yeah.
All of it.
Yeah.
And I hate to be like, it's only skin deep, but there's something about the physical appearance and the physical touch that really starts hitting the love meter for men, and not in the ways that we're probably all thinking. Like, this is actually the emotion of love. Like, this is how men show love and they want to get love, is through that physical touch. And that attraction. Women, on the other hand, women fall in love with personalities. So women fall in love with the person the man is, not so much physical traits. I'm sure that plays a part in some way. But again, in this research, it was women fall in love more times than not with the person's personality, not with any kind of physical trait, which I thought was kind of interesting.
So are we saying that, generally speaking, men live in the reptilian brain and women live in the, I don't know, cognitive brain? Is that?
Yeah, I'm not going to say men are reptiles, but you can go ahead and answer that hate mail. But no, I just thought it was really different on the different types.
If you think about it, though, I mean, that really is that carnal drive that I'm going to sow my wild oats. And, I mean, that has been stereotypical for years. And I think the beautiful thing about that is that we have evolved as people over time. And that isn't the only thing. Because like I said, I do see the men in my life, the men around me, the ones that I care for and that care for me, are so much more honorable than that it really is about, protecting and caring for and providing for those that they love. So I don't need hate mail. I know that that's not the only thing.
Her address is roundtablemindset@gmail.com.
I blame the article, man. I was just summing it up.
Then I did I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to. I recognize we're running low, but then I wanted to ask myself, okay, if men are so physical, how does love impact you physically, right? Like if a man sees and falls in love or gives love through the physicality, like we talked about, what kind of physical changes can occur that people that are in love? And I found something. So I thought this was kind of interesting. It says the bond, it was talking about the bond between two people, but really it's the love that people have between each other, that bond that they share, can lower blood pressure and stress hormones and improve your overall mood. Intense feelings of love also activate the same area of the brain as painkillers. So this article went on to say you could even say that love can ease chronic pain, which I thought was kind of cool.
Well, you've met people. I mean, have you met people who they're really good in those early stages of love because of all of those things? You know, it gives you a hit to the brain chemistry, and you know what I mean. It's intoxicating, and the rest of it is not always intoxicating. So, hitting that early love is exciting and fun. So.
Yep. My last big thing, and I do want to touch on this just because, Valentine's Day was yesterday, and I kind of think it fits into the mold a little bit. I'm going to try to be as gentle as I can. But I wanted to go down and ask the question, what's the difference between love and lust? So, there's a lot of things that in my mind, I could see very early on, maybe that's one and the same, maybe one's confused for the other. So I just wanted to go and see a little bit of research. So I found there's eight things, and I'm going to go through them really quick, how you can know if you're in love or you're in lust with somebody. Are you ready?
Okay. Sure.
Okay. Number 1. Why are you interested in the relationship is number 1. So is this something that you're interested in the person because of a physical trait or maybe, purely sexual? Or is there an interest in getting to know that person that's beyond that, and you're willing to give time to get to know that person? So, why you're interested in the relationship will be a good indicator. Number 2, are you open to the hard work? So it seems that people that are in lust attempts to keep the relationship on an ideal level, where love expands to having a more difficult conversation and exploring more painful emotions. So what I read that as is lust is surface level. Love is you're willing to go down deeper. Mm-hmm. Number 3, how do you feel about the person's flaws? It says here that lust loses interest when you discover a person's flaws, where love accepts them and regardless if they are positive or negative quality. So that's kind of the difference between that. Thought that one was neat. Does the relationship get better over time? So again, they talk about lust as an immediate gratification, where love develops a commitment over a longer period of time. So that was kind of neat. Where is the thrill coming from? So again, if you're just focusing on the excitement of the interaction and how everything feels, versus love, which is you start feeling more vulnerable and you're opening yourself up and you're letting yourself kind of get closer to somebody. So could be a good indicator. Number 6, how secure do you feel in the relationship? So that kind of goes against the opposite of what we're talking about when we're in love. You feel that safe place. This is really how safe are you? Because lust can be impulsive and desperate sometimes. And love tends to be more of that sturdy and that secure feeling. So could be a good indicator for some. Do you feel obsessed? Now this one, again, I'm going to read. I know I keep looking at the time. I'm going to just read this one because I thought this one was kind of weird. Lust is a high that can feel like an addiction and consume all your mental space. It's closely linked with infatuation. Love holds a more balanced perspective and allows for the ability to maintain a balanced life. What do you think about that one real quick?
The only thing is, in all of these, even, I don't know, I guess sometimes I feel like love starts with lust, right? And so it's kind of like, yeah, if it stays there, if it stays at that level, then yeah, there's issues. But I hate to be like, oh, run away if that's what you feel like it is, because it might just be that initial Twitter patient, right?
Well, and you fell right into my trap because number 8, is there longevity? So lust dissipates over time, love persists. So you've answered that number 8, which I thought was, that one to me was like, wow, okay. Because again, I could kind of, one way or the other justify all the other ones. And then I got to number 8 and I'm like, okay, that kind of sums it up, right? It's either going to be a flash in the frying pan and then you're done, or it's going to be something that's going to carry on with you. And I think that's, again, when it starts touching on, if it becomes more of a choice than a feeling, that might be a good indication between those two.
Well, and I do. I think that that's something that even can come into the middle of a long-term marriage. You know what I mean? That have those feelings could be rekindled. That lustful part of the relationship could be rekindled over and over again in a relationship. I don't think that goes away either. So I don't necessarily think it's bad, even though it has a negative connotation.
And then I wanted to just end my research and my rant and my conversation. There was this one last question that I wanted to ask. And I got, again, it could be a whole couple episodes. But I'm going to ask you the question, Jamie, to see what you think. What is the difference between toxic love and healthy love?
I love that question, mostly because it's something that's kind of been swirling around, ironically, not in relation to love recently for me anyway. And that I think the difference is boundaries. I think being able to set and respect healthy boundaries with your partner is to me the basis of toxicity. You know what I mean? Like if my partner sets a boundary and I'm not willing to respect or honor that boundary, or vice versa, that's where there's some issues. And that I also think it gets toxic when you don't put it away when you need to, if that makes sense. Like to just be done and walk away from a relationship that is not healthy. That's when it starts getting toxic too. So yeah, I think it all kind of stems down to boundaries.
Well, and I agree. And I think that's how you safeguard yourself. And I think that's how you limit the toxic love. I will tell you, I kind of pulled this definition. I'm going to say this is Malin's point of view after doing this research. I pulled parts of these from different descriptions and definitions to kind of come up with this one. So I'm going to read it as I have it written. I hope I wrote it well enough, but I think it kind of encompasses what all of these articles that I was touching on and looking through really was saying, which is, and I think it touches on even what you were saying with the boundaries. So here's my answer to that question. With real love, the person claiming to love another person places the focus on the loved one, the caring and consideration for their behavior. So they want to care for, and they have all of their considerations on the other person, not on themselves. The well-being of the loved one is more important than their self. So that's what a healthy love looks like. And again, I know it wasn't quite fluid, but that's kind of pulling from the different pieces. In contrast, toxic love, that person is claiming, the person claiming to love another person is focused on themselves, what they need, what they want, what their desires are. And there's really no consideration or caring of what the other person needs. That's really when I kind of summed up all of the stuff. That's where I was drawing the line between a toxic love and healthy love. Is one is focused only on themselves and the other one is focused on the other person. Because I think in a healthy relationship, and you're talking about a healthy love, you're going to do everything you can for your significant other, and then they will be doing everything they can for you. And so you're both being cared and taken care of. That's what healthy looks like to me.
And I know we're trying to wind this down and wrap this up a little bit, but I guess I have a question for you though. Don't you think that long-term relationships kind of cycle through even those pieces too? You know what I mean? Like where there are times that, if I'm not doing great, or if I'm not well, that there are some times where I am going to be more focused on myself, but it doesn't last forever. You know what I mean? can you look back over relationships and see that cycle where sometimes, yes, I'm fully committed to this person and their well-being is more important to me than me. But there might be times where you do focus on yourself a little bit more, for whatever reason, healthy, not healthy, good or bad. But don't you think that that's part of the cycle in relationships too?
I do. And I think I know where you're going with this because I kind of relate that back to my own self here, my own relationship. And there was a moment in time where my wife and I moved, hundreds of miles away, hours from any kind of family. And so we really kind of came in with a new baby into an environment where it was just her and I. And there was a lot of transitioning. And, I was going into a new job. We just bought a new house. We just had a new baby. We lived in a new state. We didn't know anybody. I mean, a lot of transition. And I would say that would be kind of one of those situations where I think we were both kind of focusing on ourselves because we had to, because everything in our whole world, I mean, there wasn't one constant left. Everything was different. There was nothing that was the same. And what I want to say to that is I still think that was a healthy form of love because where we could, we still reached out to the other one. So it might not look big. It might not be the same. I'll call it, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but it's not equal giving, but equal sacrifice. So what that means is it may be a huge act on one person's side, but that doesn't mean that the little act that the other one's doing isn't just as big of a sacrifice for them because it kind of depends on where they're at, right? And so to me, that kind of answers that question is that, I don't think it's always going to be or look exactly the same, but I also don't think it needs to. And so in my situation, it was the subtle things. It was maybe I got up in the morning and my wife packed myself a lunch, not because I asked her to, but because she realized, hey, I'll do something small and just help take one thing off of his list. Or it might be something stupid where I get in the car and she has a fresh pop waiting for me. I don't know. I'm just making this up. Or for her, it might be that I have her favorite drink made for her when she comes down after taking care of the baby. Or, give her a foot massage or whatever it is. And I'm not trying to be like, oh, this is all the stuff that I do for my wife or blah, blah, blah. But I think that's the key is it's because you still care for the other person. You're still looking for ways that you can let them know they matter and they care, that you care about them and they're important to you. Even though those actions might not be grandiose sometimes, because again, we're all in different stages of life and I'm rambling now, but that's the best answer that I have for you.
Yeah. Well, and I do think that that's part of, I think that's part of that enduring love is that, I can be understanding and gracious when you need to take a minute. And to have a partner that can be understanding when I need to invest a little extra in myself right now for whatever reason, so that we can have all of those different types of love that we talked about in the creek, right? Self-love and friendly love and physical love and all of those things. And so, I guess I think that we are in a time in society where we are so quick to judge and throw something away that may not meet our needs in the short term because we hear so much in so many different ways. We are more inundated with knowledge and information than we've ever been before, right? And I guess that's the one thing that I hope my kids, as they grow up into adults, as they grow into this space of finding that long-term love, I hope that they can remember that those short-term discomforts and those short-term places where it isn't all amazing, that they can let it endure because it comes back around. You know what I mean? It's not always amazing. Sometimes it's just really crappy, but it's not gone,
Not everything in our society should be disposable. I agree with you.
Yeah.
Well, that's all I had, Jamie. That's all the research. And again, I try to stay as surface level as I could because I was utterly shocked with the amount of information that I was getting. But I hope this conversation wasn't like a typical, let's talk about love, because I really was trying to go in different places and try to look in corners that normally aren't looked in when you're talking about the emotion that is love.
Yes. Well, and I hope you all enjoyed this episode, because even talking about something around Valentine's Day that seemed Valentine-y was not going to be an option originally. So don't plan on this again next year. Next year we'll be talking about like earthworms or something. So I hope you enjoyed this heartfelt episode of Roundtable Mindset, and hope to see you again next week. And don't forget about Talk About It Tuesday on Tuesday. We'll see you next time here on Roundtable Mindset.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. This podcast was recorded and edited by Jamie and Malin. Music by Famous Cats. If you have a topic you'd like us to discuss, please email us at roundtablemindset@gmail.com. Text or call us at 402-819-8999, or join the conversation on Facebook at Roundtable Mindset Podcast.
And never miss a new episode by making sure you like, subscribe, and share wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for being our guest today. See you next time at the Roundtable. And remember, your opinions and perspectives matter and are appreciated, but might not always be shared by others, and that's okay.